This is Stefan Schmidt for InsiderIowa.com. This week we're commemorating the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, and it's a very big benchmark in American history. It is the comparisons have been made that it's kind of up there with Pearl Harbor, that it is an important event in American history. It has reshaped American politics. It has done a great deal to affect the American economy, and it certainly has impacted civil rights and civil liberties especially. So let me talk about those just for a second. I can remember September 11, 2001. I was on my telephone to talk to some friends here at the university over in Cat Hall, and they interrupted the conversation and said, "Stefan, did you know that an airplane has just hit the World Trade Center?" And of course we know that we soon found out that it was two planes. We found out that it was not an airplane that had mechanical failure, but that it was a deliberate terrorist attack, followed by the Pentagon terrorist attack and another one in Pennsylvania that was unsuccessful, and that flight was, we think, destined for the White House. It has reshaped American society because ever since September 11, we have ramped up our national security investments and concerns and spending. We launched a war in Afghanistan, which is now, today, the longest war ever fought in American history, and there's no end in sight. It is a war against Al-Qaeda and terrorism. We launched a second war, perhaps unfortunately, in Iraq against Saddam Hussein, who had very little to do with terrorism, but nonetheless, the Bush administration, not able to find any weapons of mass destruction, eventually spun it as part of the war on terrorism. In fact, Saddam Hussein himself was a big enemy of Al-Qaeda's and had tortured and imprisoned and executed a lot of Al-Qaeda operatives. But we got into two wars, more or less, because of September 11. Those wars have cost us maybe $2 trillion at this point. I was looking at there is a clock that ticks every millisecond, showing how much is being spent every millisecond to continue the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and the number is staggering. We have obviously lost a lot of American lives, a lot of injured, a lot of Iraqis and Afghans killed as well. And all of those can indirectly be traced or directly be traced back to that fateful day, September 11, that we commemorate the 10th anniversary of this week. It has plunged the American economy into a tremendous deficit. The wars were fought off budget. President Bush and his administration decided not to put them on budget. At the same time, unfortunately, a big tax cut was initiated by, they're called the Bush tax cuts, and those choked off revenue to the federal government. So between the spending on the wars and the reduction in income flowing to the government, we threw the federal budget way off kilter, increased the national debt, and today find ourselves in a true economic crisis. And again, in part, that crisis can in fact be traced back to September 11. A lot of people are either ignorant of that or would rather not make that connection. But in fact, that is the point at which the surpluses of the Clinton administration were reversed, and we began to slide deeper into the hole. The other point I wanted to make, and it's very important, is that today, September of 2011, we are faced with a security envelope in the United States that's unprecedented in American history. We have very severe airport surveillance. We have surveillance at all levels, and in fact, this past weekend there was a football game, and we noticed that even at college football games now, there are surveillance cameras, and those cameras are there for a variety of reasons, but apparently partly to detect if there's any potential danger of an act of violence. People are frisked. Whatever they bring into the stadiums is searched just as though you were going into an airport, and it's apparently not just alcohol that people are looking for. This has never really happened before in our history. Our emails, our cell phones and smartphones, our internet traffic and where we go on the internet, all is now subject to surveillance, largely to detect any suspicious activity that might alert the authorities to a potential terrorist plot. And while it does provide us with a certain level of security, it also means that almost in a sense, every American is a suspect in the war on terrorism, and that's why the surveillance is so pervasive. We are even going to now issue face recognition software to police authorities so that when you walk down the street in cities where this software is in operation, it will be scanning people's faces and comparing what they read to databases of suspected terrorists. The software is very unreliable, and it's going to create a lot of problems of people who are marked as having the characteristics of a known terrorist being harassed, arrested, and potentially charged. And so we have a new situation in this country as a result of September 11, in which the privacy that was once the hallmark of American society has been greatly reduced, and we are really a society more and more of intense scrutiny by law enforcement authorities. We always made fun of the Russians and the Soviets, especially in that regard, and now we find ourselves, unfortunately, in a situation that's very similar, where we have a lot of surveillance. So while we remember September 11, and while we pray that it won't happen again, and hope for a speedy recovery for the economy, and also peace and tranquility for the relatives of the victims, and our best wishes to the American soldiers and other personnel who have been killed or injured in the pursuit of the war on terrorism, we still, in a sense, are living in 2001 and the aftermath of it. And it's unclear to me when we will ever get off of the alert status that we have. I call it society living on the kind of orange alert, which is a fairly high level of awareness and concern about terrorism. I think that the war on terrorism is a permanent war, and this September 11, we remember that. Politicians will have to take tough stands on terrorism, and we will see probably during the election of 2012 both President Obama and whichever Republican is run against him speak about terrorism and make the case that they are the ones who are the toughest on terrorists. I think it's going to become part of every presidential election for many, many decades into the future. This is Stefan Schmidt for InsiderIowa.com on the week where we commemorate September 11, 2001.